Hi, I'm Joe Ward of Boxer Shorts Media, and my latest experiment is a format called Feet Meet Fire. It's about increasing transparency and accountability of our politicians and bureaucrats and other wearers of expensive shoes and positions of power within our community. If they've misled the public in some way, mistakenly or otherwise, I'll call it out, holding their feet to the fire, so to speak. Not only is this a fun metaphor, it's also a great excuse to use some extremely low budget special effects. Okay, without further delay, this is indeed part one of Feet Meet Fire. As my subscribers know, I recently suggested that some CBRM councillors were gaslighting us when they warned of bogus cuts they'd need to make in order to roll out a 5% property tax rate reduction. Wait, put down the baseball bat. I get it. The problems with the tax cut have been covered by many folks at this point, so trust me, I didn't want Walmart to get a tax break either. But what you need to know is that all that talk of avoiding layoffs or service reductions was completely bogus. 100% bogus. And I'm also personally peeved that many local media representatives gave such bogus suggestions any credibility whatsoever. It was clearly nonsense. And I kind of feel like it was more than a little manipulative by those who played those cards, unless they'd rather claim ignorance instead. But rather than just tell you how it is, with Feet Meet Fire, I'll let the CBRM folks clarify it for you themselves. And what they're about to show you is that we never had to cut anything at all in order to implement a tax cut, not a nickel. Why, you ask? Because we had $15 million extra from Tim Houston to work with, over and above the entire budget from last year, and then some. And it was only a matter of deciding how we were going to spend those extra millions. Yes, of course, the very point of the budget sessions, with a lot of guidance from CBRM executives, was how to do just that. And yes, for those of you who stayed awake in Economics 101, I too know what opportunity cost is. But nothing was coming out of our typical annual budget because of the tax cut proposed. When the Northside community budget consultation happened on March 22nd, Deputy Mayor Erlene McMullen posed the question directly to Mayor McDougall and the CBRM CFO. Here she is from the live stream.
But the $15 million that we all hear about, the extra transfer, for clarity, can you tell us, without me saying it out loud, has that money been defined to any particular project, or i.e., the library, or perhaps Center 200, or, can we just put some clarity out there? Because a lot of people are approaching both of us, for example, that the entire transfer amount, the additional amount, is already allotted to go towards, let's say, a central library, which I know is not true. But if you could provide just a little clarity on where that currently sits, I'm sure that's in the minds of many in the room.
Now, please pay attention to the CBRM Chief Financial Officer's response. Campbell is one of the best CBRM executives who seems to do a very good job of resisting political bias. She says they made recommendations to spend the extra millions in the capital budget, but she clarifies that there were no commitments on how it would be spent. That was up to council to decide and to debate.
Going into the budget deliberations in April, to date there has been no commitment made by staff or council on how that money is going to be spent. The draft budgets that have been prepared thus far, that are still being tweaked as we speak, do account for the $15 million within the capital budget, but again, council has to approve that capital budget as a whole. So ultimately, each use of that $15 million still has to be debated and approved by council.
As you'll see, Mayor McDougall speaks after the Chief Financial Officer and emphasizes the same.
Again, no decisions get made until we throw it all on the table in our budget deliberations.
But the mayor was also listening and reading the tone of the room. In all budget sessions, issues related to excessive taxation, both tax cap unfairness and fears of it removal, as well as the equalization transfer, were raised by people of the CBRM. Mayor McDougall stated that there was absolutely no question that the CBRM needed to discuss where to find a reduction in our tax rate.
But also staff, before council even brought it up, suggested we need to have some discussion around where we can find a reduction in our tax rate too. There's absolutely no question in that.
The answer was rather simple for now. If they wanted to reduce taxes, they had to block out some of the $15 million in cash windfall, or some of the other increases in revenue that we've received to offset the tax revenue lost by lowering rates. But please take note, the CFO just told us the $15 million wasn't committed. Council was free to allocate some or all of it to tax reduction if that's what they decided to do. The remainder would then leave the question of what extra spending they would use it for in the 2022-2023 budget. That's it, folks. Don't let anyone gaslight you. If they supported a tax cut, the money was there, and that's regardless of how badly implemented that tax cut was or how much of our tax revenue was gifted back to Walmart. Now, if you're surprised the mayor opposed the tax cut until the tides changed on her, there's two likely reasons. For one, she didn't want money going to Walmart either. But ultimately, her plan as the president of the Federation of Nova Scotia Municipalities is to break the tax cap with their 10-year plan. If you subscribe and stay tuned for a future episode of Boxer Shorts Media, I'll break down why breaking the tax cap that way meets the approval of the NSFM, but it is unfair and destructive to our economy here in the CBRM. But I'll also tell you why the mayor should depart from her role with the NSFM and refocus on a plan that works best for all of us right here in the CBRM. So let me ask you, did you fall for the gaslighting? Or do you understand that there was never any threat of any cuts whatsoever, and they didn't have to find the money? The $15 million was the money. Not only is this a fun metaphor, it's also a great excuse to use some extremely low budget special effects. Not only is this a fun metaphor, but it's also a great excuse to use some extremely low budget special effects.